When you do what I do for a living, when you run a website like PantherLair.com, you host a show like the PantherLair show here on TribLIVE Radio, you basically, most of your existence professionally is defined by watching Pitt and Pitt football and covering Pitt and talking about Pitt. Inevitably, when you meet people or you run into people or you just, casually interacting with people, they're going to ask you about Pitt. This is what happens. I was talking to my neighbor the other night, and we were talking about how we went to a Pirates game because, and this and that. We're talking about the Pirates, and all of a sudden he starts talking about Pitt and asking about Pitt because he knows what I do. I have a brother-in-law. Every time I see him, we talk about Pitt. It goes with the territory. You do this job, and that's what happens. And inevitably, this time of year, and it happens every year at this time of year, the question is always the same. How's Pitt looking? What's Pitt going to do this year? How's Pitt going to be? And this is where it gets tricky. Because, first of all, you got the training camp thing. You've got the fact that training camp is training camp. And when you watch training camp, it's guys practicing against their teammates. And sometimes they're not even practicing against their teammates. They're doing walkthroughs or they're doing tackling drills or this or that. And you could say this guy looks good or that guy looks good. But we've seen countless examples over all levels of football. Every team in the history of the sport, really, training camp doesn't always equate to the regular season. You don't always know what you're going to get. But the thing is with Pitt, and this is what this has become my standard response this year. Every time somebody asks me, how's Pitt looking this year? You know what I say? I say, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to be this year. I can tell you what I think. I think they've got a pretty good quarterback, and I think they've got a great running back and a great wide receiver, and it should be a pretty good offensive line. I think they've got a defense that should get better with the introduction of a head coach who's one of the known as one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. But I could have told you a bunch of things last year, too, that I thought I knew about that team and what that team would do, or the year before, or the year before, or the year before. You can pick a year, and I can tell you, going back to 2005 when I first started covering the team, you can pick a year, and I can tell you during training camp what I thought I knew about that team. And then I can point out example A, B, C, D, and E of how absolutely wrong I was about that. Because I thought last year's team should have had this, and this going forward, and then they blew it against Iowa, Akron, and Virginia, not to mention the late season stuff. I could have told you that the 2012 team had this, and this going forward, but then they blew it at Notre Dame. They gave up 24 points in the first half against UConn. And don't forget Youngstown State and the embarrassment in Cincinnati the next week. You could go back and back. You could go to the Todd Graham era. You can go to Dave Wanstead's 2010 season that followed the 2009 season. You could go to the 2009 season or 8 or 7 or 6. All 10 of those seasons I've covered at Pitt. I could have told you things that I thought I knew in training camp, and when the season played out, I was absolutely dead wrong. So if you see me on the street, you run into me somewhere, we're walking along, and you say, hey, Chris, nice to meet you. How's Pitt looking this year? And I say, man, I don't know. I'm not trying to be rude. The reality is, I just don't know.